Once upon a time, a man named Nigel Farage promised Brexit would fix Britain.
Even if things did go wrong, let's just assume that things went wrong.
Yeah.
That the worst case scenario, economically, is better than where we are today.
But today, with all his talk of invasions and refusing entry, we have to ask a real question. Would Farage have sent Jewish refugees back to Hitler? That's not just clickbait. It's a test of whether our politics are repeating history's ugliest moments, or are we learning from them?
The common reaction now from people is, you're the last chance, mate. Democracy just doesn't work anymore. Maybe we're nearing the end of times for the democratic process, for the country that we know and understand.
Do you think you could be the next Prime Minister?
Yeah, I do. 25% of the country hate me? Well, I hope so. I don't care.
So first off, he starts talking about UKIP and its brilliance. He suggests that in 100 years, everyone is going to remember about UKIP and its impact on Britain.
So looking back at that, UKIP, Brexit Party was slightly different, a bit more professional, but you see those parties as sort of just a bit of a joke movement, or?
No. In 100 years' time, people like you will say that UKIP was the most successful political party in history.
It doesn't work. Nothing in this country works anymore. The health service doesn't work. The roads don't work. None of our public services are up to scratch. We are in decline.
Successful at destroying the UK as a union, successful at destroying the UK economy. I'm not sure where he's going with this. Almost seems as if he forgot his own speech saying that everything's wrecked. But only a few minutes later, he also confirms that everything's not working, despite what you saw at the beginning.
I think this country's in a perilous state. Nothing works. We're getting poorer. GDP per capita falling quite consistently. Crime is now at a level most people don't even report it. 57% of women are scared to walk the streets of London.
Yeah.
We're in big trouble. I think the narrative out there that this is broken Britain, that nothing works, that frankly they're both as bad as each other, this is now more deep set than it's ever been.
Did you see his reaction to the chaos?
We've seen the pound has been tanking today. We've seen, is that not happening?
It's very funny.
Now, in the past, one of the major causes for the rise of authoritarian dictatorships from democracies in the West has been this economic downturn and someone turning up and saying, I know who's causing this, and they generally go for foreigners or they go for people with supposed extreme views in political ideology. Now for the next bit, I want to build a picture of what he intends to do, and you'll see what his major focus is.
So let's get into it then. So first 100 days, you walk through the front door of number 10.
Yeah.
What's the plan?
Well, my first speech, outside number 10, I will not need to refer to my notes 158 times. In the 9 minutes of Starmer's speech, he looked at his notes 158 times. The guy didn't know why he was there. Had no clue why he was there. It was about being Prime Minister. So I can speak without any notes at all.
That's really weird. That's really weird as a response. You've had the ability to think about what you do for the country for 25 years, and when someone puts in front of you, when there is or appears to be some big opportunity for him to become Prime Minister of Britain, the first policy he wants to start talking about is how he won't be reading his notes. And that type of answer reminds me of Donald Trump. Donald Trump is clearly showing signs of cognitive decline. Watch this.
Mr. President, is there an expected time frame that detainees will spend here, days, weeks, months? And does that have anything to do with the immigration judges you just spoke about being trained and staffed here?
When you say, what was the first part of your question?
Is there a specific time frame you expect the detainees to spend here, days, weeks, months?
In Florida?
Yes, here at Alligator
I'm going to
Alcatraz.
spend a lot. Look, this is my home state. I love it. I love your government. I love all the people around. These are all friends of mine. They know them very well. I mean, I'm not surprised that they do so well. They're great people. Ron has been a friend of mine for a long time. I feel very comfortable in the state. I'll spend a lot of time here.
We will, and you're running a bit ahead with some of these questions, to be frank, because there are massive challenges next year. I mean, next year we've got Scottish Parliament, Welsh Parliament, the whole of London, all 32 boroughs, several thousand seats in the Midlands of the North. So you are running a bit ahead. But if we get to that point, unlike Starmer, we will come in with a plan.
It seems that a lot of the obstruction coming from inside the machine is all about, migration and tactics and strategies to be able to deport and stop boats. It's probably one of the issues that you're known for most at the moment. It's an issue which is massively up there in terms of...
Well, because I predicted it. I was on this before anybody. I was on this when the odd boat was coming every fortnight. I was going into the channel and filming this stuff and saying that, I remember I said in 2020, there will be an invasion.
Some other famous leader from history once described immigrants coming into Germany as an invasion. And part of the reason he was able to push that forward was because there was an economic downturn. But the big kicker was that Hitler didn't create that economic downturn. It had already been created and he exploited it. The difference with Nigel is that he's helped create that economic downturn with Brexit.
And the abuse I got for it was extraordinary.
So how would you stop it?
Well, to be clear, these two won't stop it. Even Rwanda couldn't work, ever, because of the ECHR. So you have to leave the ECHR. You have to be prepared to look at the UN Refugee Convention, but to redefine it exactly three quarters of a century later. Nobody that ever comes via this route will ever be given refugee status, will ever be given permanent leave to remain, will ever be free to walk the streets of our country.
The exact same thing that the Daily Mail and many right-wing commentators were commenting on with the Jewish population when they were trying to flee Europe from Nazi persecution. Nigel then mentions the United Nations.
This is the year 2005, not 1945. We're not fighting each other anymore. These are our partners, they're our colleagues, and our future lies in Europe.
And the UN Refugee Convention. The organisation that was in part designed to try and stop World War III happening, but also it created the UN Refugee Convention in 1951 in order to make sure that all countries take in refugees from across the world, because they wanted to make sure they learned from the lessons of the past and not have a repeat of people being refused entry into countries because of their ethnic background. I could even point out to you that the ECHR was made by British people, and Nigel wants to scrap all of it because he doesn't like it. He's decided that this is illegal, and he never wants to talk about the moral implications. And the problem with talking about whether or not it's legal, well, if we go down that route, slavery was legal, concentration camps was legal, the Holocaust was legal. Unfortunately, in history, we find ourselves in a position where we find lots of insane people gaining power and then passing laws which makes it legal.
Do you think Rwanda could work if you were outside of the ECHR? A third country to tear it, maybe not Rwanda specifically.
It would certainly help.
So far, Nigel's big plan, which he's been asked about repeatedly, is to full focus on 40,000 refugees coming over the channel every year. And part of the way he's intending to do that is by funding a government that until this week had been funding terrorism in another country creating refugees. Yes, you heard me right, Rwanda was backing terrorism in the eastern Congo in order to take territory. That's Nigel's big plan, to focus on 40,000 a year refugees and to back a country that backs terrorism.
Okay. A bit like Australia in that route.
Well, so the Australians, but this is where it's very interesting. So the Australians started off with their route, but in the end, what did Tony do? He towed the boats back to Indonesia. The end. So the end game is we tow the boats back to France. There's a huge diplomatic incident, but
So Nigel's plan is to have a diplomatic incident with the French, who probably won't back down because they're also going through a period of nationalism.
This is the year 2005, not 1945.
Remember Jersey and the blockade, and we had to send a British warship in? The French government in return was saying they'll cut off the electric to Jersey. And as for what he wants to do to refugees, well, essentially he wants them to go back into their burning house. Does that sound like a policy the Nazis would push? The BNP? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Well, have a listen to this about him wanting to send people back to Afghanistan and Iraq.
Deportations back to Afghanistan, Iraq, wherever it may be.
When I hear Nigel make comments like that, it makes me go, he lacks any empathy. And I have to ask the question, do you think Nigel would have sent Jews back to Nazi Germany if they'd fled over the channel? Because that's pretty much what it's like in Afghanistan right now.
The regime is all male. by the Taliban for the Taliban. The drive through Kabul reveals more drug users and street children than we've seen before. Food prices are soaring. More than half of the population is hungry. In the evenings, women sit in front of the city's bakeries, begging for a loaf of bread.
All the Afghan troops and soldiers who fought with the British and Americans who have been left behind by the British and Americans, Nigel just wants to dump them back in with the Taliban, where they'll be tortured and killed. Just like what would happen if the Jewish refugees from the Holocaust had come over to Britain and Nigel had sent them back to Nazi Germany. Or maybe Nigel just thinks this is okay because the government have passed the law, so therefore it's legal. Just like concentration camps, just like the Holocaust, just like slavery. There's something else I noticed. Hitler, when he got into power, as well as other dictators, removed the power of other institutions and also legislation that might impinge his ability to inflict upon Germany an authoritarian state.
How would you go around sort of...
I don't want more legislation, I want less legislation. I want to remove, Article 8, the right to a family life. Oh, Judge, I've got a cat. All right, you can stay. I mean, the whole thing's ridiculous.
Yes, that's right. It is ridiculous. The reason it's ridiculous is because Nigel just made that up. That might be the reason put into the statement, but that's not the reason the judge would decide to allow someone to stay.
And you see these cases every single week.
What about hate crimes? Do they have any place whatsoever?
There is incitement, and incitement's bad. We saw incitement at Glastonbury. Predictable incitement. And yet Lucy Connolly, from what I could see, sent one wrong, bad, intemperate tweet. One. No previous history of any of this.
Yes, we do know, and in fact his deputy, Richard Dice, was actually pulled up on this only a few days ago and corrected on that record, which Nigel has either conveniently forgotten or is just going to continue spouting his racist propaganda.
Let's start with what Lucy Connolly said. Within hours of the Southport stabbings, nothing was then known about the killer. The internet was full of claims he was an asylum seeker. To her 9,000 followers on X, she wrote, "Mass deportation now. Set fire to all the effing hotels, full of bastards, for all I care. If that makes me racist, so be it." Now, she was later convicted of inciting racial hatred. But she had a habit of nasty tweets, didn't she? 4 days before the Southport murder, she responded to a video shared by extreme right-winger Tommy Robinson, showing a black man being tackled to the ground for allegedly performing a sex act in public. She posted, Somalian, I guess, loads of them, followed by a vomiting emoji. To an anti-racism process in Manchester, she wrote, "I take it they'll all be in line to sign up to house an illegal boat invader then. Oh, sorry, refugee. Maybe sign a waiver to say they don't mind if it's one of their family that gets attacked, butchered, raped, etc. by unvetted criminals." There's a pattern here, and it's not a very pleasant one, is it?
I'm not saying it is, but either you believe in free speech or you don't. And the question is whether you're breaking the law. That none of that stuff is, in my context, very nice, but it's not breaking the law.
Once again, I have to remind people that Hitler was going around at the time talking about anti-Semitism and migrants as a negative. We can see that from the beginning, where he released his book Mein Kampf, and he started saying that rhetoric more and more in public, convincing thousands upon thousands of people that anyone foreign or Jewish or homosexual or Jehovah's Witnesses, and soon, if he continued to be in power, Catholics and Christians, that they are the enemy from within and they need to be eradicated. In essence, manufacturing a fear. And frankly, I see very little difference in this, and especially when you start advocating for free speech like that. I don't agree with racism. I think it's as insane as flat earth theory. And yet it's given airtime. It's given the opportunity to breathe in Britain. And the concern that I see with history repeating itself was that Hitler and his views of racism and immigrants was given time to breathe, and he kept repeating it for over 20 years, and eventually large chunks of the population started believing it. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Nigel would have been the type of Prime Minister that would have sent Jewish refugees packing? Now, I appreciate after such a dark topic this is a hard ask, but if you could, hit that like and subscribe button. I'd also like to say a big thank you to all of my Patreon and YouTube subscribers, and to those who bought me a coffee this week. Much appreciated. I can't say this enough, the channel is struggling. The book, Manufactured Fear, is close to completion. I'm doing a final review this week. Once again, thanks for listening. Bye for now.